we hardly need an occasion to celebrate what looks likely to be the inevitable future of the automobile. But here we are in the outskirts of Chennai at Mahindra's SUV proving track to drive their brand new electric SUV, the first electric SUV from Mahindra, the XUV 400. And this is a car and an SUV that is going to completely change what Mahindra has been doing in the past. It's going to be getting into the electric space, a space that it has big plans for. We are here to drive the XUV 400 through the day, experience it, and give you a first-hand review of this new SUV from Mahindra. The XUV 400 is a vehicle that must look familiar to you. This has been built on the same platform. In fact, it's derived from the XUV 300, a vehicle that has been on the road and a car that has had its own loyal following. The XUV 400, like the XUV 300, has a lot of the dimensions shared between the two vehicles. The length, the full length of the vehicle, the XUV 400, is a little longer. The XUV 300's weight, the height, and everything else has been borrowed. It's 200 mm longer and now gets a far better looking rear than the XUV 300. The other thing that you can observe, of course, in the design is some of these changes. The satin copper color being a color that Mahindra has adopted for the electric vehicles, and of course the new Twin Peaks logo of Mahindra right up front. There is no slatted grille for the breathing. The standard Mahindra grille that we are used to is missing. Instead, it gets a solid fascia because there is no engine inside here for it to need breathing. So that's what the XUV 400 looks like from the front. Headlamps very similar, lots of LED elements now, of course, and a clean flush front side with that strong SUV profile that we already know of from the XUV 300. As you can see, it is a more shapely tailgate. It's not that upright, overly sort of stubby tailgate that we saw in the XUV 300. This one has a nice curved end to it. Also releases a lot more space inside the boot for more luggage capacity. In fact, with the sort of parcel tray level, it's about 378 liters, and all the way to the roof, if you were to stack something, it's about 413 liters of space in the boot. And that essentially is the tail lamps and the finish for the rear. Very classy, very neat, very sort of modern look to it, and of course still very conventional. In fact, you won't be able to tell that this is an electric until, of course, you're aware that the matte copper logo is an indicator of it being an electric from Mahindra. The cabin is a clean finished cabin, lots of plastic and yet very neatly finished. That whole matte copper trim elements being borrowed and brought into the cabin also. It's still good to see that it has physical controls, lots of buttons and knobs for controlling the aircon, for the radio, for the infotainment, and of course the steering wheel getting a lot of controls already on it. The trim levels are going to vary. What you're seeing here is likely to be a top trim variant, and this is of course only going to be a single motor front wheel driven vehicle, so it's not going to get four-wheel drive. So in terms of trim variants, some of those other hardware related changes may not happen, but what you see here is likely to be the top trim inside the cabin. There's enough space both in the front and at the rear. This is a relatively speaking larger vehicle compared to the Tata Nexon, but that said, it is also not too much bigger inside the cabin. Mahindra is focusing and hoping that this car can sit in the C segment, in the mid-C segment, possibly in the premium end of the mid-C segment, and that essentially is what you get in the cabin. Leather stitched steering wheel, the center console having most of the features within access for the driver. Of course, there are a few nitpicky ergonomics issues. For example, my smartphone wouldn't sit on the wireless charger. So that's something they might have to work on. But this essentially is the cabin. That's the sunroof right here, and enough leg room and headroom for even tall passengers. So it gets a small touchscreen where you get simple functions for the phone, for navigation, for radio, for Android Auto connectivity, and of course car information, likely to be, if you're going to use the reverse camera, for example, if I set it to reverse camera, you get a...
Please select the parking mode if you need assistance.
You get a view of the rear clean with a track guide. Then of course you have the option of choosing navigation if you are going to drive off to your destination. The display itself can be switched on and off using a simple button. Now, in addition to this touchscreen infotainment system, there's also the instrument cluster with an MID and a simple analog display of the state of charge, of the way the vehicle is being driven, whether it's being driven on economy or whether it's driving with full boost. So that's a simple analog dial that shows that, and of course it has a speedometer and the middle MID showing things like distance left in terms of for the state of charge. So you also get 3 drive modes, the default mode being called the fun mode, and then there is a fast mode, and also what Mahindra calls a fearless mode, which is obviously peak power output. There are multiple regeneration levels that this vehicle gets. Mahindra says that these regen levels cannot be chosen, but the system calculates the amount of regen that can happen based on a speed of the vehicle, based on the current conditions for the battery, and of course based on amount of brake input that the driver is giving.
Mahindra's focus for the XUV 400 is a clear attempt at trying to take on current competitors in the B and C segments. The electric powertrain in the XUV 400 is aimed at delivering above average performance in terms of both sheer acceleration and driving range. Battery itself is a 3.9 kilowatt hour lithium ion battery pack, and power is delivered from the battery pack to the front wheels through a permanent magnet synchronous electric motor that generates a peak power of about 150 PS and a peak torque of about 310 Newton meters. All of that torque is instantly available at the wheel from standstill, unlike conventional fuel powertrains which take time for the power and torque to peak. So the 8.3 seconds to 100 kilometers from standstill is a certainly believable number. It effortlessly accelerates from standstill, and even though we didn't time it, that level of acceleration seems certainly capable. But what I'm not so sure about is Mahindra's claim that it can do 456 kilometers on a full charge. That is its rated driving range. My guess is its real world driving range would be closer to 300 to 330 kilometers on a full charge. Charging times for the battery pack vary from about 13 hours via a 16 amp wall socket to 6.5 hours from a 7.2 kilowatt AC charger to about 50 minutes to get a 80 to 80% charge via a 50 kilowatt DC fast charger. At the Mahindra proving track, the high banked oval is an experience through which you could put any car and feel completely thrilled driving it. With a high bank doing 150 kilometers, which is the top speed for the XUV 400, it still is exciting to be in the cabin while experiencing this. And it also is a track where you can genuinely experience the straight line stability of the car, and again the XUV 400 does really well there. Some of the twisted tracks which are meant to simulate uphill or downhill driving with hairpin turns, again the XUV 400 feels a little heavy, but it does manage to drive through them at considerable speed while maintaining its poise. The XUV 400 also gets a low L mode for single pedal driving, where the region is high and meant to return fairly high levels of charge back to the battery. Mahindra engineers have also taken the frequency dependent damping and multi-tunable valve with concentric land suspension setup, which we first saw in the Scorpio N, and they've plonked it into the XUV 400. The ride quality was an aspect that is particularly likable in both these vehicles, and the XUV 400 definitely benefits from it too.
So that's the XUV 400 that we've been driving today. Has been a relatively fun experience for a vehicle in this size class. It is underpinnings have been changed significantly. The body in white has been changed. The suspension is all new, especially in the front. There is a lot of capability in terms of its whole acceleration, the 0 to 100 in 8.3 seconds, supposedly being the fastest Mahindra ever made. This platform vehicle that we know of is the XUV 300, and that both the petrol and diesel variants are less powered than this one. This one delivers 110 kilowatt and 310 newton meters of torque. That's a significant amount of output for a vehicle of this size, and electrics are going to be the future whether we like it or not, and for that future this is a good start.